I call this meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 30, the House of Commons Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082 and the motion adopted on February 1st, 2022, the committee is resuming its study of science at the Department of Fisheries and Oceans. This meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the House Order of November 25th, 2021. For those participating by video conference, when you are ready to speak, click on the icon to activate your mic. And please speak slowly and clearly. When you are not speaking, your mic should be on mute. For interpretation, you have the choice at the bottom of your screen of either Floor, English or French, and I'll remind everyone that all comments should be addressed through the chair. I'd now like to welcome our witnesses for today. We have from the Atlantic Groundfish Council, we have Chris Pescato, Executive Director. From Baitmasters, we have Mark Prevost, President, and Wally McPhee is joining, I think, as we speak. Vice President. From Gulf Nova Scotia Fishermen's Coalition, we have Leonard LeBlanc, Professional Advisor. And from Ocean Choice International, we have Kerry Bonnell, Vice President, Sustainability and Engagement. And we'll start. I will say before we start that if we are interrupted by a vote, do we plan on doing it virtually on the phone? And then when we all get it done, we can let us know and we'll continue on so we're not so long. Okay, perfect. We'll begin, of course, now with Chris Pescato from the Atlantic Groundfish Council for opening remarks for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. On behalf of the Atlantic Groundfish Council and its members, we would like to thank the committee for the invitation to appear on this important study. The Council represents the greater than 100-foot groundfish enterprise allocation holders in Atlantic Canada. Members harvest over 45,000 tons of wild groundfish annually, supporting thousands of jobs at sea and on shore. Member enterprises are critical to the rural and coastal economy in Atlantic Canada. The AGC coordinates Marine Stewardship Council sustainability certifications and fishery improvement projects for many fisheries. These programs provide premium market access by providing evidence that these fisheries are managed sustainably, supported by high-caliber science advice. The primary goal of DFO Science is to provide advice to inform transparent decision-making by the Minister. Work conducted by DFO scientists is vetted and translated into stock management advice to the Canadian Science Advisory Secretariat. The CSAS peer review model is the envy of fishery science processes internationally. When functioning properly, it delivers balanced, transparent, and verifiable advice. While individual reviews may have challenges, this is not indicative of broad failures of the Directorate. The agency believes CSAS is well suited to its core purpose. Our concerns with departmental science are directed at the inputs necessary for success and focus on fundamental fisheries science. Improvement requires attention to key areas, including stakeholder involvement, survey reliability, balanced investment, stock assessment capacity, and objective peer review processes. Including industry and other stakeholders in the science review process is key to robust outcomes and broader acceptance of science advice. Industry brings a unique historical and current perspective often available to departmental scientists, ENGOs, and academic representatives, all of whom are experts in their own right. Industry participation creates an environment which leads to further cooperation and collaboration among these groups. Given that the data used in science assessments is often collected by industry, our inclusion is a necessity, and disallowing this participation will result in significant lost knowledge. Delivery of information via complete scientific surveys is a necessary component to the provision of robust science advice. The capacity of the Canadian Coast Guard to deliver reliably the necessary platforms to collect this information has been challenged by a combination of aging vessels, deployment scheduling, and new vessel failures. Multi-year gaps in survey coverage are now becoming the norm. This undermines DFO's ability to ensure information collected on new vessels are comparable with those of the past, jeopardizing decadal time series. Poor research vessel fleet management leads to less certainty on stock status, unknown stock trends, and increasingly erratic advice. Fixing this problem must be a priority. Core areas necessary for good fisheries management, including stock assessment science, have been overlooked or remain underfunded. Recent staffing efforts focused on populating new programs have resulted in a drain from existing ones. This means more vacancies in key stock assessment positions and gaps in analytical capacity. Concurrently, DFO has increased the reliance on these same under-resourced work units. Legislated requirements and highly technical stock assessment frameworks mean stock assessment scientists are now being tasked to do more with fewer resources. Priorities are routinely dropped and shifted to accommodate new requests. Balanced investment is needed. Becoming a proficient stock assessment scientist requires years of training, offered at a limited number of postgraduate institutions. Some skills can be learned over years of on-the-job experience and with mentorship from existing experts. Creating an environment where institutional knowledge can be passed to the next generation of stock assessment experts should be fostered by the department alongside employee retention strategies to keep newly developed expertise in stock assessment positions. CSAS reviews are often populated by personnel from within the local work unit, creating an environment of positive reinforcement precluding fulsome review. External reviewers are increasingly difficult to identify because of time demands, limited expertise, and a lack of compensation. This creates an environment of cursory reviews as opposed to the scrutiny envisioned by the CSAS structure. Input received by the department from reviewers during the assessment process can be challenged to record an action because of significant delays in providing documents for participant review. Improved rigor of the CSAS process can be achieved by providing financial compensation to reviewers and improving the timelines of review and posting of materials arising from CSAS processes. Stock science advice has a level of uncertainty which is considered and incorporated when harvest management strategies and harvest control rules are developed through advisory and science processes. Once agreed, these harvest control rules provide future predictability on quota change and future harvest decisions. With increasing frequency, ministerial decisions are departing significantly from this process, promoting arbitrary reductions in absence of established scientific process or support. This must be addressed. We ask that you consider the key recommendations presented in our submitted brief, as we feel they're integral to improving the development, communication, and utilization of scientific advice. The importance of robust science has never been higher. We are in a period of profound change in the marine environment, driven by the large-scale forcing of climate change. Reliable scientific advice is key in ensuring that the oceans of tomorrow, while different than those of today, will remain a sustainable source of low-carbon protein needed to feed a growing world. We thank you for considering our input and welcome any questions or comments.
Thank you. We'll now go to Mr. LeBlanc for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. With my family tree having Acadian, Mi'kmaq, and Métis, I'd like to recognize today being National Indigenous Peoples Day. Mr. Chairman, it's a pleasure to appear before the Standing Committee of Fisheries and Ocean, as I've done previously in different occasions. My name is, as you mentioned, Leonard LeBlanc. I was a harvester for 36 years and president of our association for over 40 years. This past March, I've stepped down as president of the Gulf Nova Scotia Fishermen's Coalition, but remain as an advisor. During all these years, I've lived through different life cycles of science. Harvesters used to view science as a tool to control their participation in the fishery and their livelihood. And there was little trust in science. If we go back in history, there was a time when fishermen were not permitted to attend meetings with DFO. Only buyers were allowed. These things changed, doors open, and here we are now. However, I'm here to state before you that history has evolved and changed for the best interests of all. In my early years as president of our association, I took it upon myself to study the management of the fisheries and quickly realized that science could be a valuable asset to advance positive changes in all fisheries and ensure sustainability. I'll give you a brief description of my thought process. When I was fishing lobster in the 80s, we could barely make enough revenue to qualify for EI. After the call moratorium, we quickly realized that we needed to have a greater say in the management of our fisheries. We spent over a year looking at changes we could implement to increase our lobster landings and revenue. A committee was brought together which included Pictou Landing First Nation, the provincial government, DFO management, and science. We built our own management plan entirely based on science, which allowed the harvesters to be more involved in science and build a better relationship with it. The result was increasing the minimum carapace size and reducing our fishing effort to increase egg production. We expanded the carp book size by a total of 15 millimeters over time, a significant increase. However, because harvesters were involved in the science process, they knew that this was what was needed. Harvesters are now having their EI clawed back, not a bad thing. And our fishery is far more sustainable than ever it was before. DFO science has improved over time. Some of us have been selected as external experts in scientific peer reviews. The Gulf Nova Scotia Fleet Plan Board, of which I am the managing director, is working collaboratively with DFO on a 5-year scientific exercise to study the scallop buffer zone, a marine refuge area. And I provided its figure 1. This area was used in the calculation of the marine protected area. This project aims to increase the monitoring capacity within Canada marine refuges to fill in critical knowledge gaps so that the effective conservation measures can be implemented to protect our marine environment. This is an example of a mutually agreed process by industry and DFO that would not have happened in the past. In addition to this massive project, the Gulf Nova Scotia Fleet Plan Board collaborates with DFO on many other science ventures, including salinity and water temperature study, lobster recruitment research, and the lobster molt cycle project, and much more. DFO must take into consideration the capacity that the fishing industry can add to its data collection. Science is now our strongest ally. Without it, this fishery and industry would only be a small fraction of what it is today. In conclusion, DFO must have sufficient financial resources to conduct its work. Previous governments have devastated DFO's science budget in the past. This cannot happen again because the fish, the fishermen, and the economy and the environment will lose. DFO's decision to close the herring and mackerel fishery this spring without a science-based rebuilding program bewildered many in the industry. This fishing community must be further integrated into the process. Thank you for the invitation.
Thank you for that. We'll now go to Mr. Bonnell for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you for the opportunity to appear before the Standing Committee on Fisheries and Oceans. Ocean Choice International shares the Standing Committee's keen interest in science at DFO. Ocean Choice is a family-owned and operated Newfoundland and Labrador seafood company started over 20 years ago by brothers Martin and Blaine Sullivan from the Southern Shore, an area of the province with deep roots in the fishery. Today, Ocean Choice is a global seafood company with extensive harvesting and processing assets throughout Newfoundland and Labrador and Atlantic Canada. Our success relies on both the inshore fishery, buying and processing raw material from approximately 1,900 independent harvesters, and the offshore fishery through company-held quotas. Through this, we employ over 1,700 people from over 300 communities. We are focused on employing best practices to reduce our environmental impact. We use modern processing and harvesting technology and innovative fishing gear to improve our sustainability and reduce our carbon footprint. As an example, in 2020, we launched the only green class designated vessel in the Canadian groundfish fleet. We are responsible for delivering wild, low carbon, sustainable protein to the world, and it's certainly our responsibility to make sure it's available for current and future generations. Over 90% of our harvest is covered by the Gold Standard Marine Stewardship Council sustainability certifications for certified fisheries and through fishery improvement projects. We invest in the collection of marine data for scientific research for DFO scientists. We fund an industry research chair in fish stock assessment at the Marine Institute of Memorial University, which has grown into a nucleus of training for next generation stock assessment scientists for the department. This is really a great example of how collaborative research should be conducted. This leads me to the focus of today, the state of fisheries science at DFO. There is little doubt that the Government of Canada has significantly elevated investments in DFO science. However, we are concerned that these investments have primarily been to support ocean science, such as funding to support marine conservation targets, marine mammal research, et cetera, as opposed to its capacity and expertise for commercial stock assessments. While investment in ocean science is critical to monitor the health of our oceans, it is high quality stock assessment science that ensures the sustainable and optimal utilization of Canada's fish stocks. In our view, it is deeply disappointing that stock assessment science has not seen a comparable or comparable infusion of funding, even though demands for government required rebuilding plans, as well as sustainability certification supports have grown exponentially over the same time period. Coupled with capacity challenges in science staff, alarming gaps are emerging in DFO's multi-species fisheries vessel survey program, which provides the basis for stock assessment science. For example, in 2021, the entire multi-species spring and fall surveys were missed for NAFO Division's 3LMNO off the coast of Newfoundland and Labrador. This coming off the back of a fully missed survey year in 2020 due to COVID-19 has resulted in 2 full years of missed data for a multitude of indices. The 2022 spring survey for this area appears to have also been largely missed, resulting in potentially an unprecedented 3-year gap in coverage, which is completely unacceptable. The implications of this situation are massive for the Canadian seafood sector, as these surveys are the basis for responsible fisheries management decision-making, resulting in reputational risk, undermining market access, sustainability certifications, and increased pressures to be even more conservative with management decisions, with the accompanying opportunity cost burden for industry. Why the survey failures? Many reasons have been provided, ranging from COVID-19 to the aging Coast Guard fleet issues and missing calibrations with the new vessels in the fleet, but the results are the same, missing data. We all know about vessel operational challenges. However, such challenges, while real, should be overcome by good planning on the part of the Canadian Coast Guard in managing these research vessels. It is also noteworthy that throughout the pandemic, industry-led surveys continue to operate without interruption. These are surveys where oversight is provided by DFO Science, but industry platforms are utilized for a variety of reasons, including operational and cost effectiveness. A great example of a working industry-led survey is a Northern Shrimp Research Foundation survey, which since 2004 has been operated annually on schedule without delays or major disruptions at a cost well below what government can achieve. As the committee continues to hear from stakeholders and as you develop your report on the performance of DFO Science, I ask you to consider the following 2 recommendations. First, government must immediately address their research vessel issues and actively plan to expand the use of industry vessels as a more reliable means of gathering much needed data that drives good scientific advice and ultimately science-based decisions by the minister. Second, I strongly urge the government of Canada to make strategic reinvestments in fundamental fisheries science and in particular stock assessment modeling capacity. These are the underpinnings of fisheries management in Canada and are critical for the sustainability of our marine resources and the creation of more value from the blue economy. Thank you for considering my input, and I welcome any comments or questions.
Thank you for that. We'll now go to Mr. Prevost for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee for inviting me here to speak today. It is our understanding that we've been invited here today to provide testimony as representatives of the fishing industry, and in particular as a manufacturer of an alternative bait for the crustacean fishery. Bait Masters is based in 9 Mile Creek, Prince Edward Island. Through extensive research, we recognized there was a high demand for an environmentally friendly bait product that is more cost-effective and sustainable in the crustacean trap fishing industry. Our concept came from our own experience working in the lobster fishery and direct knowledge of the shortages of available bait due to pervasive issues and declining pelagic fish stocks. The fluctuating cost of traditional bait, the waste of fresh bait and spoilage, and the messy prep of fresh bait. Assessing the size and scope of the bait industry for crustacean fishing is challenging. Industry participants and regulators all acknowledge the difficulty in collecting accurate data as stated in the Mackerel Integrated Fisheries Management Plan. The actual landings of mackerel are likely significantly underestimated, as mackerel used for bait is not included in the Department of Fisheries and Oceans official statistics. Current and traditional practices in the supply, distribution, and sales of bait products have not lent themselves to accurate recording. We have estimated the size of the industry by combining the DFO published information and what science and experience tells us about the amount of bait used to catch different species of crustaceans. In Atlantic Canada, including Quebec, the DFO stats for 2020 indicated that there are 8,749 lobster licenses, 4,036 crab licenses, averaging out the number of traps per license at the 275. It ranges from 250 to 300. Each trap uses a minimum of 1 pound of bait per trap. Multiplying by the length of the fishing season, Bait Masters roughly estimates and conservatively estimates the demand for bait in Atlantic Canada, including Quebec, is approximately 694 million pounds. On April 30th, 2022, Fishery and Oceans Canada announced the closing of the Atlantic mackerel and Southern Gulf spring fishing and herring fisheries. The Conservation and Sustainability Framework for Canadian Fisheries and Integrated Fisheries Management Plan indicated that mackerel stock has been at a critical level for the past 10 years, and the herring stock has been at the critical level for the past 20 years. Due to the current stock levels of mackerel, findings in audits by the Marine Stewardship Council has driven the need for actions that encourage the support and improvements in mackerel fisheries management, mackerel stock assessment, and an imperative to identify sustainable alternatives to traditional baits. This is hard for me because I'm probably the only guy that's going to be on a boat today buying lobsters and fishing boats, so I'm kind of struggling through this, but I'll finish it up here. With the closing of the mackerel and herring fishery, it brings several issues to question. Sustainability. Of these two fisheries, it is critical for the long-term success of the castration fishery. The current data regarding stock levels are not accurate due to undeclared catches and the uncertainties in the scientific method of collecting the data, as indicated in both mackerel and herring IMFP. Fishers need bait and have looked for other sources, including importing mackerel from Norway and Spain, as well as turning to other pelagic fish such as redfish. Is there a risk of impacting stock levels of other fish? Yes. What is the impact, economic and environmental, of importing fish bait from other countries? Bait regulations. Canada currently does not have any regulations regarding bait. There is no process for review, validation, and certification that a species or product is safe for use in the ocean fisheries. There is no traceability of imported fish, so there's no understanding of the origin of fish. The Department of Marine Resources has a vigorous process to assess and validate bait used for fisheries. The review conducted through a bait review committee comprised of scientists and a qualitative risk assessment of each species and or ingredient for a proposed bait is conducted. Additionally, a chain of custody for all species and ingredients is required once the bait is approved. The chain of custody is required to remain with the bait up to and including the end user, which is the fisher. We suggest such rigor be applied to bait in Canada. Alternative bait. The crustacean fishery is a very traditional industry maintaining practices that have not only endured the test of time, but have provided a livelihood and demonstrated success to those involved. Fishers are reluctant to change these practices, in which many cases have been passed down through generations. Bait is very much one of those traditions. It varies from fisher to fisher and geographical location. To truly impact the stock levels of mackerel and herring, an alternative must be used to allow the rebuilding of the stock. The alternative must incorporate what the traditional fishers need without putting a strain on mackerel and herring or the introduction of a new species. To overcome generational traditions and practices, the traditional fishers will need an incentive to try a sustainable alternative bait. Their livelihoods depend on crustacean fishing seasons, and motivating them to change must be balanced with an offset to cost to minimize the risk to fishers. Thank you for letting me present today. We're not scientists by any means. We have a deep understanding of the industry and the challenges we are facing, and we know that we can be a part of the solution. We look forward to answering your questions and ongoing discussions.
Thank you for that. And I'll just state, Mr. Provost, we're not interested right now in hearing from scientists. We want to hear from people in the industry like yourself. So thank you again for doing this today. We'll now go to our rounds of questioning. Before I go to Mr. Perkins for 6 minutes or less, I will remind members to please try and identify who you want to answer the question, and you'll make better use of your time. So, Mr. Perkins, for you for 6 minutes or less, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, witnesses, for appearing. And we do appreciate we've had a balance of scientists. We've had a lot of scientists before the committee, but we need to hear from those who are actually on the water and delivering it, because we believe that there needs to be a balance. The ministry needs both sides, at least those two sides, in their decision-making process. So my first question is for Mr. Fiscato of the Atlantic Groundfish Council. I'm going to use a very sort of specific question. The Fundy and Channel Browns Bank area interest, and for those who are watching, an area of interest is the last step before an area becomes a marine protected area. And according to DFO, that area encompasses important oceanographic processes and diverse sensitive benthic habitats that provides shelter, feeding, and nursery areas for a variety of commercial and non-commercial species. And we know that that's why, in particular in lobster, for example, that's one of the two important breeding grounds for lobster in southwest Nova Scotia that provides breeding for lobster from southwest Nova Scotia through New England, that and St. Mary's Bay. And recently, only a few months ago, the minister announced that Facebook would be able to lay a fiber optic cable through that area, some of it on top because it's too hard to dig, and some of it buried right through that important breeding ground that is designated for a marine protected area. And we also know there have been lots of science studies that show those cables have electromagnetic fields that could be impacting the migration patterns of lobsters, yet the minister allowed that to go through. So it seems like we're getting these contradictory messages from DFO. One says we want to protect these areas, but in the other we're going to allow Facebook to drop a fiber optic cable right through a breeding ground for lobster. And I know in response to that you made comments, Mr. Viscato, publicly about the lack of consultation with the industry in doing that and the terms around that. So I'm wondering if you could take a few minutes to comment on that issue.
By all means, thank you very much for the question. Really, this is one of those situations where the industry was directly contacted by a proponent who intended to put the cable down in the tail end of last year of 2021. We were never contacted. This was never brought to our attention directly by the department. It was all done on a proponent on a last-minute basis. We actually were one of the few groups that looked at this and said, okay, we need to engage in this, and we directly engaged the proponent. We provided them very clear evidence of A, they were going through a potential marine protected area, B, they were coming directly through some very, very important fishing grounds of ours, and we really had no idea what the implications of this were going to be. When we were initially contacted, we didn't know whether it was going to be sitting on top, going in beneath, what the impacts would be through the to the values that were identified within that Fundy and Channel area. Subsequently, or after this situation developed, we raised it with DFO in an advisory situation. We were promised to have some sort of consultation, some sort of discussion. That never actually transpired. At the end of the day, we received a notice on a Friday afternoon from a telephone call from somebody in New Jersey that the cable was being installed in the coming weeks ahead. When we reached back out to the department on this, we were led to understand that this was because of some international regulations governing the way that these communications cables are laid outside of 12 nautical miles. What really we found quite interesting about this situation was what you really brought focus to, which is what was going on in the Fundy Channel. So this cable that's going directly through the Fundy Channel, they were able to avoid further scrutiny on it because the mitigation measure that was offered was to lay it across the top of the bottom, as opposed to doing any sort of destructive habitat work of sinking the cable underneath the sediments, where it would also be protected from incursions due to gear effects, whether it be mobile gear or long line drift or anything like that. At the end of the day, we were left on the outside not really understanding how this activity, A, was being permitted to happen, B, what the impacts were going to be to those conservation values that they had identified as establishing this area of interest, which will inevitably become a marine protected area, and C, we really did not understand what the impacts were going to be to our actual fishing activities. This is very similar to putting to somebody laying an extension cord across your driveway and telling you that you'll be responsible for it if you happen to run over it. And that was especially troublesome for our members who are actively fishing and processing ground fish and shipping them through customers around the world. It was really a bit of a miss on our understanding in terms of understanding what the impacts of the actual program was going to be and what our overall sectoral involvement was potentially able to help guide this cable to be either outside of an area of interest, which we're working with the department to try and establish an MPA on, and whether we could have moved it away from our fishing ground, which members are actually out there fishing today. I hope that I was able to address your inquiry, Mr. Perkins.
You did. Thank you very much. I have a little bit of time left, so I'll ask one supplementary. if I have a moment?
I've got your time paused, so you won't lose it, but I have to ask for unanimous consent to continue since the bells are ringing.
Oh,
So I see the lights flashing. I thought that's what I asked for at the beginning of the meeting, but somebody is telling me in my ear that still got to ask for it. So again, you have 26 seconds left, Mr. Perkins.
oh, that includes the answer. So my quick supplementary, because I got many more questions, is I understand the department had a letter of advice to the companies involved as to what they had to do to mitigate those measures. I haven't seen it. The DFO has refused to release it, as I understand. Have you seen it?
No, I have not seen it. I'm aware of the contents, which included basically the challenge was there might be damage to sensitive benthos by bearing. So the solution was to lay it on top in those areas. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. Your time is up. We'll go now to Mr. Callaway for 6 minutes or less. And I will remind members it's a 15-minute bell, so we all agreed earlier that we'd vote from where we sit. So when the vote is actually called, we'll get to it. So Mr. Callaway, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses for being here. And an important study, and the Chair mentioned it early on, around the importance of hearing from scientists, but also hearing from people that work in the fishery. And your evidence, your testimony has equal weight, is so important and appreciative of it today. My questions will be directed towards Mr. LeBlanc. And if I may, I'll call you Leonard, but if that's okay. Leonard, you talked about the importance of science in your testimony. And I want to go back to an important topic for everyone around this table, if not the Atlantic region and on the West Coast as well, in relation to pinnipeds and establishing a strong foothold in terms of having it to be a viable industry. So I'm wondering if you can, maybe from your perspective, walk us through what are some of the things we need to be doing now in terms of making progress very soon, and also some of the pitfalls we need to avoid from your perspective.
Thank you for the question, MP Callaway, if I can call you Mike. Since
Please do.
We've known each other since a while. I think you're probably referring to seals and the overpopulation of
That's
seals
correct.
in Atlantic Canada, which we've witnessed over many, many years, getting bigger and bigger. I think there's a need to have a science-based approach to start with. I think you need that. You need to establish markets for the product you're going to bring ashore. Maybe even expand in the medical field, because I think the Maggies was doing a study on possibly using valves, and they were probably better than the pig valves they were using now. So you probably need to invest more money into that and see how viable that is, and then you need overall the inclusion of the fishing industry to be from the onset to be part of the plan. Because if you don't, you'll be missing an important link. I think every speaker that's spoken so far talked about the link of industry with science, and I think there's a need within this industry. So I think action needs to take place and needs to take place soon, and I think we need some action on this population that is taking over other species.
Just staying on that narrative in terms of collaboration, and again, you talked about it in your opening statement with respect to the 5-year study on scallops and how that's working. I will get to that in a minute, but in terms of that collaboration, can you unpack, we use words a lot around here like collaboration, cooperation. So in terms of collaboration with fishers, in terms of making significant movements forward on creating a viable, strategic, outcomes-based, rural economic boon for Atlantic Canada, what does that look like in terms of the collaboration? What would fishers want to see in a collaboration?
Well, I think it starts by having industry input into the protocol. to start with, which would be the basis of, how do we start? So you bring industry together in one room, and then you just simply talk and formulate from that an action plan to proceed. Usually, what happens in too many occasions, it's the FO writes a protocol, writes the standard, and then just delivers it to industry and say, here it is. So I think we need to take a step backwards and involve industry from the very beginning, and so that everybody understands where each side is coming from, and then maybe even bring somebody from marketing to help at the same time. But you need to start from the very beginning and not after the protocol is written and DFO decided on what the action should be.
How much time do I have left, Mr. Chair? 1:15. I'm going to give Mr. LeBlanc a break, and I'm going to go to Bait Masters if I can. And number one, thank you for doing this today. I know it's exceptionally busy for you, as you stated, and I appreciate the presentation. So I'm wondering if you can tell us what's the demand like for your product now? And the second piece to that would be, if you had a crystal ball, and I know you don't, but if you did, what's the future for alternative bait?
Well, the hope is there's a good future for it. I think with the recent quota reductions, particularly the mackerel and the herring, all it really did is increase. It hurt us more than it helped us, because now there's the quantity of mackerel and herring in the freezers in Atlantic Canada is higher than it's ever been, and then the amount of export coming into Canada from Morocco, Japan, Spain is higher than it's ever been. So there's going to be more bait in our freezers, and everybody knows there's an issue with cold storage in Atlantic Canada now because of the influx of bait. So I don't think the quota reductions are really helping right now. Over time, it probably will. I believe there's some probably with a lot of the stuff coming into Canada, there's probably some danger of contaminated fish or radioactive content in some of the mackerel from Japan, for example. Once all that washes out, I think what'll happen is we'll look for the next best thing. I mean, fishermen, me included, we need bait to fish with. So we'll end up putting a strain on another species. You could see most recently here, PEI, Nova Scotia, New Brunswick, Gaspereau is now the fresh bait of choice. There's no more fresh herring or mackerel right now. So Gaspereau is being overfished, and that won't take long. It'll be 2 years before we have an issue with that. I didn't catch the second question, but
I don't know if I have time. Do I? No time. So I'll get you on the other side.
Gone way over. We'll now go to Madame Desbiens for 6 minutes or less, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président. Je vais rester.
Thank you. I will stay with Mr. Prévost. I'd be curious actually to see if you have any roots in Quebec, because Leblanc and Prévost are last names that really resemble the ones that are in Quebec. We have a lot of those in Quebec. Mr. Prévost, you talked about alternative bait. I was in the Madeline Islands recently, and I met some seal hunters. We talked about the following option. If the management of the seal population was brought forth, there are some concerns with regards to how the seals would be hunted just for the sake of being hunted. It should really be with respect to the actual animal. I was also informed that after the flesh has been eaten and the skin has been recuperated, there is a research process so that the residue or whatever is left could actually be used in alternative bait. Can you expand on that?
My Prince Edward Island French isn't that fast, so I kind of missed most of that. If anybody could redirect for me, that'd be helpful.
Alors.
At the bottom of your screen, you could select floor, English or
Oh, I
French.
see.
So if you select English, it would be translated into your ear as it's been spoken in French here in the room.
Okay, rookie mistake.
On recommence?
Yeah, I'll ask Madame Debienne to ask the question again as short as possible and allow you to give an answer.
Oui.
So I will abstain from the comment on your last names, but what I was saying was that I met seal hunters recently in the Magdalene Islands, and they talked about increasing seal hunting if possible, of course with restrictive conditions, so a respectful means of hunting, and with social acceptability. They of course talked about maximizing the sacrifice of the animal by using everything we can. So once the meat has been eaten and you have the option of maximizing the skin product, there's whatever is left could be interesting with regards to alternative bait, and that could be used for alternative bait. Have you heard about that? And can you give me your opinion on that?
Yes, yeah, we've heard of it, and we've been asked numerous times. I think we had a minister in here last week, Minister of Rural Development from Newfoundland. So I believe it's worthwhile to investigate trying it in an alternative bait. Right now, we're using 80% byproduct in our bait sausages. And we have proof of concept, and we're selling it, so we can make money at it. With the seal, we don't know. We'd have to grind up, test 10,000. Typically, a field test is 10,000 sausages against 10,000 bait products that are the fisherman's already using. But as far as lobster diet and crab diet goes, I think seal would work. I would think. We're investigating.
That does seem concerning to me, because if there is a concern of having radioactivity with the mackerel from Japan, but I would love to know that whatever we fish here is fished with bait that has been, respected. Mr. Leblanc, with regards to better foreseeability for mackerel and herring fishers, among others, because that is the experience we have right now. But we have asked there's this idea of asking the DFO for predictability with regards to financial compensation or with regards to decisions that are made suddenly. Is this something that we should suggest to the DFO, that they should always foresee for future decisions a compensation fund? I'll answer in French. I do think that it is necessary when a decision is made within very short delays to have a compensation fund, especially for those who depend more or less 100% on this kind of fishing. The DFO has decided to not have many discussions with the industry, and so yes, I do think it is necessary. So I appreciate your pedigree, but you've spent 36 years as president of your organization. You must have seen a lot of things. You make me think of my father. You remind me of my father. I don't want to age you or anything, but you do have that experience, on the ground. And I think everybody here can see that there might be some provisions in order for us to strongly suggest to the DFO that they take into account the realities on the ground. Earlier, you talked about science being an ally, but that you do need some openness and better communication. Do you think that that is possible in the short term to improve communication and to make it more efficient between DFO science and people on the ground, like where you are, for example? I think a discussion with science can take place immediately. I don't think that we need to wait. With regards to mackerel, for example, but well, they were thinking of having some discussions in the fall. I think that that is too far. We should be having meetings right away. I think that the delays should be really shorter for discussions. And what would be your biggest request?
Gone
Mais
over,
j'ai juste
and
à
I
50, à
I did
29,
I did
moi,
allow,
I just have 29 on my watch.
or get it translated. We'll now go to Ms. Barron for 6 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. Trying to find the timer on my, I'm just going to have to trust your timing. Thank you to all the witnesses who are here today. It's really valuable to us in this study that we hear this information and appreciate all of the statements and questions that are being answered today. Merci, Caroline. My first question that I wanted to ask was to Mr. Provost. Again, thank you for being here. You spoke a bit today about there currently not being a process for review, validation, and certification that a species or product is safe for use as bait. In the crustacean fisheries. You also spoke about the importance of the chain of custody to remain with the bait right up until the time it's in the hands of the fisher, and also reference the Maine Department of Marine Resources as a good example of that chain of command that occurs. I'm wondering, how do you think the lack of understanding of the origin of the fish is being used, the fish that's being used as bait, impacts our ability to sustainably fish? And any thoughts around that?
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you. I'm just, I mean, we manufacture an alternative bait, so there's ingredients in it. It's all fish, but some of the ingredients that's being used now, I guess, in alternative baits or regularly, wouldn't pass the conditions required by the Department of Marine Resources. And I think as fishermen start switching to alternatives, there's a danger, and protect, we do it. We do the risk assessments and the studies so that we know we're not going to negatively impact the biomass or the lobster, or we're going to give something to a lobster that somebody's going to eat. And I also think with proper chain of custody, it avoids a lot of the undeclared catch or any of the the cash stuff that goes on, and whatever happens, there's a lot of product coming and going for cash, and it kind of takes care of that, which helps people track the or DFO, I guess, if they want accurate stats. They need to have an accurate recording of what's being sold and what's being used. And I also believe that process that we go through it for some of the custom baits. So the first thing we do before we introduce a species for bait is we'll put it through a risk assessment, so we know that it's safe for the biomass, and it's also safe for human consumption. If the lobster's eating it, then somebody's eating the lobster. That's why I think something like that's important for Canada.
Thank you very much. My next question is for Mr. Bonnell. We've spoken a lot about the importance of stock assessments and the vessels required to conduct the stock assessments. And one point you touched on was the investment in a green class designated vessel. And I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit more about how DFO has involved fishers in a transition to a greener fleet and expand on what that designation actually entails.
Yeah, thank you for your question. And so that's the newest vessel added to our fleet, the MV Calvert, which is one of our it's our largest vessel, factory freezer trawler operating offshore Newfoundland and Labrador. It's been an industry process that's really drove that exercise. With a new vessel build, you have the opportunity to do things the way you want to do them and to follow best practices. Kind of difficult with existing vessels in the fleet. Modifications are more challenging, but when you're starting from scratch, as we were, you want to put all the modern technologies. I think based on our estimation, trying to recall the numbers now, but we we save about, compared to another vessel of a comparable size with the green class designation, about 2.5 million kilowatt hours of energy per year, about 500 tons of saved fuel per year. So think about reduced greenhouse gas emissions, think about reduced costs, given the cost of fuel right now is a major consideration. It's everything from LED lighting throughout the vessel to automated technology on board the vessel to clean exhaust technology. Pretty much it's state of the art. Everything that's available that we've installed on this vessel, and we're quite proud of it. We're quite pleased with it. And as we go through a continual fleet renewal over the coming years, we'll be looking to do the same thing. This is one step in a multi-step process that we look at as a company, ranging from vessels to working with obviously DFO and stock assessment science and trying to advance best practices there, to marine bioprocessing, waste utilization. We are an industry, I say generally, is continuously looking at ways to do things better, to do things more environmentally sustainable. I would say fish as a protein source is already among the lowest carbon sources of protein that you'll find globally. But I think we continue to look at ways to doing it better, doing it more efficiently. Some of that is driven by industry, some of that is driven obviously by government, some of it is driven by NGOs. But moving along in this manner along the spectrum of sustainability, it's a responsibility I think that we all bear and we're all pursuing. I think is a fair point.
Thank you. I love hearing about this. It's a great step in the right direction. I'm just wondering, I don't think you answer this question, but are there any barriers that you're seeing for others to be able to go down this road that you're taking to ensure that your ships or your vessels, are greener and more sustainable?
Well, I think the key barriers on the vessel side, if that's the specific question, is it's very difficult. And I lived in this space. I worked in academia before coming into industry, and I ran an organization called the Canadian Centre for Fisheries Innovation for a number of years as well. And it's very challenging to modify existing vessels in the fleet, whether it's an inshore vessel or an offshore vessel or middle distance vessel. The costs involved in modifying vessels to be greener, to be more sustainable, are very challenging. There are things you can do, obviously, to get more efficient. But when you're starting from scratch, when you're going through fleet renewal, building a new vessel, you have the option to look at, in the inshore sector, a length to beam ratio that's more appropriate to ensure, a streamlined vessel in the water to cut down on fuel costs. You can look at bulbous bow designs. You can look at, reducing sulfur emissions. There's all kinds of things that you can look at doing with a new build that is kind of difficult with the existing fleet. So where industry is moving to renewal, and I should say there are programs out there. I mean, if there's one area you ask what the government of Canada is doing, obviously there are programs like the Clean Tech Fund that's available right now, coast to coast is my understanding. That industry can avail of to look at ways to reduce greenhouse gas emissions on vessels, in plants, throughout the value chain, throughout the supply chain. So expansion of programs like that, I think, would be quite valuable to continue to help industry down this road, to look at where possible cost sharing some of these improvements where the costs are prohibitive, and take on sector specific initiatives to help advance this agenda. So I think the maintenance and continuation of programs like the Clean Tech Fund as an example would be quite beneficial.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. A little bit over time. We'll go to Mr. Arnold now to see if we can get in his 5 minutes before we have to take part in a vote.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses today. This study is one that I put forward to examine how the Department of Fisheries and Oceans prioritizes resources and develops science studies for advice for the department, how the results of the science study are communicated to the minister and Canadians, and how the minister applies data and advice provided by the department and other government departments in ministerial decisions. Mr. Viscato, I'll start with you. On June 2nd, our meeting here, Melanie Griffith of the PEI Fishermen's Association told the committee that their association has not always been invited to participate in DFO science and science advisory processes. When the association made a request for a seat at the table, it's been denied even as an observer's seat during that process in the past. In her view, there is a lack of interest by DFO in hearing what fish harvesters have to say, considering that harvesters see changes in the marine environment before DFO scientists. Mr. Viscato, in your opinion, how should fish harvesters' knowledge be integrated into the CSAS process?
Thank you very much for the question. This is one of those issues that's near and dear to all of our hearts. One of the unique positions that industry members are able to bring forward, and I look around at the list of witnesses that we have on this meeting today, is they are actually able to bring observations that are outside of the standard, whether it be DFO research vessel surveys or some sort of external viewing through satellite image of chlorophyll or things like that. So they are observing things on the water. Now, bringing these people into the CSAS process is incredibly valuable because they're able to discuss and present this information, which trained scientists can then take and actually formulate their advice from. It also allows when data is being presented that might not necessarily match the interpretation from the fishery, context can be provided. Redfish fishery. We recently had a CSAS process where they were discussing bycatch and bycatch patterns. Because we were able to include industry members that had experience in that fishery, they were able to point out that some of the data that was being presented was incorrectly pulled from a database, and so was leading to very inappropriate examples of where bycatch was being encountered, what was being encountered, and at what rates. So the industry
Thank you. I've got a whole series of questions, so I've got to try and move on if I can.
Thank you.
How would you say academics and environmental non-government organizations collaborate with fish harvesters in the science projects?
So we collaborate directly with them. We often work directly with DFO Science if they require some additional information, whether it be length-weight relationships being derived from a plant, gonad samples being taken from our vessels. With the environmental non-government organizations, we also try to collaborate where we have a common interest or goal in mind. Sometimes this can be challenging because some people come to the table with different perspectives. I'll keep it short for you. Thank you.
How difficult is it for you to evaluate if a particular DFO management decision or policy has been evidence informed?
Thank you for the question. We look at the decisions as they come out because we also have at evidence the CSAS reports that are being produced, which can tell us what a projected stock is going to do, what factors are being involved, and actually provides that clear advice to the minister, which is translated through the groundfish advisory or those resource advisory committees. When a decision comes down that is outside of those key areas or key recommendations, then we begin to ask the questions of how was this developed, what was the basis of it, and sometimes we come up mystified. Other times there is a real rationale. We just need to be able to understand it such that we can gain the greater industry buy-in.
Thank you. What industry inputs are most absent from the DFO science process?
Often the inputs that are missing really are derived from some of the people that you'll see around on this call. Because of this move away from a larger inclusion of the harvesting community into some of the CSAS processes that we see, that voice can't be heard. So those questions are coming after the process is complete and after the decisions and recommendations have been made. Being able to front and load those questions into the process allows those answers to be developed and greater industry appreciation, involvement, and understanding to be derived from it.
Thank you. Quickly with Mr. Bonnell.
Well, Mr. Arnold, you only have about 12 seconds left.
I could have got it in 5.
You won't get an answer in.
You could.
You won't. I think
cutting me off when others
I'll
have
give
gone
you
to
your
7.
15 seconds when we get back. But I think we got to pay attention to what's happening in the House. There's a vote called and the time is counted down. So we're going to take a very short recess to enable members to vote. We've all agreed to stay in the room and do it by phone or by the app. So we'll get back to the business of the committee very shortly. So we'll take a quick recess to enable people to vote. An answer.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Quickly for Mr. Bonnell, you mentioned that there are gaps in fisheries science. Can you give us some concrete examples of this and describe the implications of these gaps? And if you don't have time for a full verbal response, we'd be happy to see a written response further.
Yeah, sure. I'm sure my time is short. So certainly stock assessment modeling capacity would be probably the biggest area that we would flag. Statistical analysis, ensuring you have the capacity to be able to take stock assessments that are completed when they are completed, which is one of the issues we have, and a robust review and analysis of those to make sure we're using the most up-to-date, latest models that are taken into account climate change considerations and so on and so forth. We haven't seen those types of investments in Canada that we're seeing in some other Western jurisdictions, certainly places like Norway and Iceland, where there are significant investments in stock assessment science capacity. As I indicated, I think the investments here are more on the ocean science side, which we support as well. I'm not knocking that at all. But we need a fundamental investment in core modeling capacity. It's not exciting when you're talking about modelers and assessors and statisticians, but it is the foundation of sustainable fisheries management in Canada that we need.
Thank you, Mr. Arnold. We'll now go to Mr. Cormier for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you. I'll ask my question in English or French to just make sure that maybe your translation button is on. So first question goes to Mr. Bonnell. In your remark, you said that 90% of your harvest is covered by the MSC Sustainable Certification. I kind of know this certification since 2017 when we were impacted by the right whale measure here in my area. What will be the impact of your industry on your business and on the market if we lose some of this those certification?
Thank you for the question. It's a topical question, certainly. Huge implications. I mean, for us as a company, and we have our own global sales capacity in North America, Europe, and Asia, and it is a market access issue for us, particularly in North America and Europe. Asia, emerging, but North America and Europe, we cannot sell seafood into high-end markets without either our fisheries being Marine Stewardship Council certified or in a robust fishery improvement program, which is a path to certification. These are well-recognized programs that put you on a path to certification. Unit 1 redfish is an example of one that we're engaged in now, gray sole, a number of others that are coming out of moratorium and will eventually roll into likely MSC certification. It is absolutely essential. Absolutely essential.
So on top of that, as you're probably aware, like the Marine Mammal Protection Act also, like the U.S. are monitoring closely what we're doing with our fisheries. Like we're talking a lot about seals lately. And I think we all understand that we need to do something about the seal population, that has some effect on our like other species. But if we do it wrong, on seal, like if we just go there and harvest seal for just harvest, like can this have an impact also on our crab and lobster market, for example, in US? Because as you know, this is where we export almost everything. And so what is your thought on that? What is your take on that?
Yeah, no, it's a relevant topic. I mean, we deal with this on a regular basis in terms of, again, market access issues. You do have the Marine Mammal Protection Act considerations in the US. We have the new SIMP program, import monitoring program coming from the US, where, we have to declare basically that our commercial fisheries are not having negative implications on marine mammals. You've already touched on the issues in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, obviously on the snow crab and lobster fisheries and the implications. So it is something that is, certainly in North America and Europe for global sales of our seafood, we need to be aware of, and we need to consider, and we need to make sure whatever we do is done certainly thoughtfully. And we're looking at responsible and sustainable utilization of all of our marine resources, seals or otherwise. So yeah, it has to be done the right way. But on the flip side of that, I think, and you've already covered this, we have a huge predation issue with respect to seals. 7.5 million harps in our waters. I think the Seal Task Force indicated that 3.2 million metric tons of food consumed from those seals. It's a real issue impacting the recovery of a lot of fish stocks. So it requires dedicated attention on a number of fronts.
Just quickly, I'm pretty sure you're aware of the right whales measure. You see the chart, the map of the Gulf, like almost shut down. Do you think those measures will be a little bit revised and we can still, retain the MSC certification and at the same time, like making sure that the Marine Mammal Protection Act is met with the U.S.?
Well, I would absolutely hope so. I mean, the MSC certification has been suspended with respect to the Gulf and the issues on snow crab, at least. And, we as a company, we do buy some crab from that region, and that's created a lot of challenges in terms of selling that into the U.S. market. So there's a fishery improvement project right now looking at ETP species. I'm loosely connected with it, not directly connected, but I think it's on the right track, looking at ropeless skier, looking at a whole host of things over a period of time to get us back into that certification, because it is, you'll buy some time with a FIP, but you got to make sure your FIP leads to the actions necessary to get back into certification. So yeah, no, it's a good point.
So I wanted to go to Mr. Prevost, but since you got me there, so you're saying that the MSC certification is very, very important. As you know, like it's been suspended. I think it's still suspended, but the price never been so high. So like, you know what I mean? Like it. Put it in perspective when you tell fishers that is very important, but at the same time they are having like wonderful price, like they're kind of like, saying, well, maybe the MSC certification doesn't matter that much at the end of the day. So
yeah. So 2 quick points on that. One is I think the price may be high to harvesters, but the market price is not high right now. And we're in a collapsing market, unfortunately, but that's a bigger conversation. MSC is a market access issue. You're not guaranteed premium prices for MSC. It's a bit of a misnomer. Some people like to argue that it is. In some cases, you might be able to find a premium, but the reality is it's a market access issue. It gets you in the door, irrespective of price.
Perfect. Mr. Prevost, maybe I have a little time and I'll get back to you.
Thank you, Mr. Cormier. You're gone over, actually, your 5 minutes. We'll now go to Madame Debienne for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I will continue in the same vein as Mr. Cormier, because I do find it very interesting to hear about the right whales and the restrictions of the United States. They are legitimate or valid in my opinion, because we do have to look at the ethics of fishing. Mr. Bonnell, I will stay with you. Again, when I went to the Magdalene Islands, which was a very fruitful trip, we did talk about the possibility of monitoring the right whale, but in a more specific way. We know that there are satellites in the universe that are able to target very narrowly the movement of certain mammals. Should the DFO not use more technology in order to allow fishers to retain their fishing zone for a longer period of time and have more predictability with regards to the right whales?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I mean, I'm getting a little bit outside my area of expertise. I'm not directly engaged here, but I do follow it closely. I think the dynamic closure structure that's been in place in the Gulf has evolved quite a bit over the past couple of years, and has created some level of flexibility for industry. I think technology, I came out of the technology space, as I mentioned earlier, and I think technology is advancing so quickly these days, whether it's satellite technology or acoustic tracking and tagging technology. There are so many opportunities to advance technology to make this process more seamless and allow commercial fisheries to operate more seamlessly, while at the same time protecting sensitive species like right whales and other species that need protection. I think we're going to see a technology revolution over the next number of years in these areas. I think it's the right thing to do. Cost effectiveness obviously is a consideration in all of this. Whatever we do, whether it's the gear that's developed by fishermen or whether it's the technology used by governments, finding ways to do this in a cost-effective basis obviously is going to be critical. But it's a cost, generally speaking, it is a cost of doing business, and it's a road we have to go down. There's no going back on these measures. We have to deal with them.
Thank you, Madame Debienne. There's only 8 seconds left, so I don't think we'll have much time for a question or an answer. Ms. Barron for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. My first question is to Mr. Bonnell again. One thing that we've talked about in this study with previous witnesses was the importance of having access to publicly available DFO science and research. Can you clarify a little bit your experience within Ocean Choice on being able to access such information, and any suggestions that you might have on ensuring this information is more transparent and accessible?
Yeah, thank you for the question. I think as Dr. Viscato indicated earlier, I mean, many of us are engaged in the stock assessment and science process and management decision-making process with DFO on key stocks, whether it's the CSAS process, whether that's fisheries advisory process. I think, the data that's available, generally we get access to, and we're generally part of that process. We have indicated some concerns in recent years about restrictions in harvester representation. But generally speaking, the access to the data is not the big problem. The bigger problem from our standpoint is the gaps in data collection. And as I outlined in my speaking points earlier this afternoon, the fact that we have multi-species surveys now that are being missed. And I used examples of the Newfoundland and Labrador region, but you could cite examples in the Maritimes. You could cite examples on the West Coast. My friends in the Eastern Arctic that I spend a lot of time with. There are a lot of gaps in stock assessment surveys right now that need urgent attention.
Thank you,
because
Mr.
we need the
Brown.
best available information.
Thank you very much. Mr. Viscato, I was wondering if you could speak a little bit about, you had spoken about the importance of knowledge being passed down from generations of scientists, and I'm wondering if you could speak to your perspective on the need of mentorship or institutional knowledge being passed down and how that impacts your day-to-day.
Thank you very much for the question. Really a great example of this lies with DFO survey information, which Mr. Bonnell was just discussing. Surveys are conducted annually, and those surveys require whether they harvest or whether they sample during the day or the night, and how this changes over the time. So if you have a staff member who's well trained and has 30, 40 years of experience with this survey information, knows where the limitations are, being replaced by somebody who doesn't have that same knowledge, you lose all of that institutional understanding about the context of how that survey information might be interpreted. So without that overlap and that mentorship, you fail to have those pieces of information that weren't necessarily well documented to be transitioned to the next person, the next individual in that position, to be able to share that continuity. The same is true about some stock assessment approaches, whether something was used one way in the past, another way now. And these are all pieces that we need to avoid making the same mistakes as we've done in the past, and also to make sure that we're continuously moving the bar forward as it comes to developing their scientific capacity. I hope that addresses it. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Byrne. We'll now go to Mr. Small for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to all the witnesses for coming here today. My first question is for Mr. Bonnell. Mr. Bonnell, what are the industry implications of the missed Coast Guard vessel surveys over the past 3 years? And how could the Minister create a pertinent management plan without those assessments?
Well, thank you for the question. The implications, as I indicated, partially at least in my opening comments, are significant. I mean, these areas, these multi-species surveys are the basis for decision making on many key fish stocks. I'll use our company as an example. I highlighted the 3LMNO missed surveys for the past 2 years, and potentially the spring survey this year missed as well, so 3 consecutive years. Think of fish stocks like Greenland halibut that are highly lucrative fisheries, where most of that management zone has been missed. Yellowtail flounder, which is a major fishery for us, has been missed the last 2 years, maybe the last 3 years. Redfish, snow crab would be another one that was missed in the multi-species survey. Luckily, we have a really good high-quality trap survey in the case of snow crab. But these missed surveys have huge implications because you have no new information to come into. When you come into the CSAS process and when you get into the management decision-making process, you have no new information really to base decision-making on. So you have no trends. So that can present a huge opportunity cost for industry if we're looking at resources that are trending in an upward direction. Conversely, obviously, there are concerns in terms of any negative impact it might have if you're not monitoring those stocks on a regular basis. So there are huge implications for us. And in terms of doing it better, or what the minister could do, I mean, there's 2 things as my recommendations sort of outlined. One is to close the gap on the missed surveys, which I flagged with the Canadian Coast Guard. Second is to look at ways for industry to be more actively engaged in these surveys. We do this, and I've used examples on the call, like in my opening comments. I could use other examples where industry surveys can be used to help fill gaps that exist in DFO direct science. It's still driven by DFO. The data, the survey methodology is still driven by DFO. The surveys are still, the oversight is provided by DFO. It's analyzed by DFO, peer reviewed by DFO, and recommendations come out of the minister's office, obviously, come out of the department and into the minister for decision making. So those are the areas I think of improvement that really are urgently required to address some of these massive challenges that we're facing right now in stock assessment.
Mr. Bonnell, what are your views on how government could more readily engage industry in research vessel surveys?
Yeah, so again, I used the example of the Northern Shrimp Research Foundation. It's a really good example. We've been doing this survey now since 2004, I believe. All the offshore members in the shrimp fishery are engaged in this. It's off the coast of Labrador and south of Nunavut. Survey is conducted. Our vessel is actually used for that particular survey. It's been done for I think 18 years now, on time, on budget. And contributing valuable information annually into the assessment process by DFO. Again, all oversights provided by DFO. I could cite similar examples on Atlantic halibut, where we're engaged directly with DFO on industry-driven surveys in the inshore sector and partnering with the midshore and offshore members. There are examples in the scallop industry. There are many redfish off the south coast of Newfoundland. We have an AGC survey conducted every other year. So there are many examples of where industry surveys and during the pandemic, didn't miss a beat. In 2020, our surveys were largely still completed, and the information was still largely provided to DFO, and it was done independently and with oversight and standardized. And there's an opportunity to do more of this, I think, on a go-forward basis. I'm certainly firmly of the view that can be done, particularly to address the gaps with the Coast Guard right now, and at least having contingency plans. One of the more strong recommendations, and maybe my last point on this that we've made to government, is have contingency plans in place. So if a vessel goes down, have a couple boats or several boats in industry standardized through the trawl standardization process and be ready to go on relatively short notice. So at least you have a backup plan, a contingency plan, if one of the aging vessels in the fleet goes down, or if you have an issue with one of the newer vessels in the Coast Guard fleet, you have an industry platform available to provide that service, so you don't miss this valuable information. That would be something I would strongly recommend as well.
Thank you, Mr. Bunnell.
Thank you, Mr. Small. We'll now go to Mr. Morrissey for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Chair. My question is to Dr. Vescato. Numerous witnesses appearing before the committee have referenced the DFO modeling, something that I am not familiar with at all, but a retired senior DFO manager referenced the Scandinavian stock model. So, Dr. Vescato, are you familiar with the DFO modeling, and is it accurately capturing the data that's going in an effective manner to get the right decision coming out?
Thank you very much for the question. This is one of those questions you could go on for hours on. The reality is every stock assessment model is fundamentally different in how it's structured. And one of the important pieces of the review process is to pick apart that model and to make sure that it actually makes sense. Does the values for recruitment make sense? Do they match what's seen on the water? Do the patterns for growth match what we're seeing on the water? Do the trends in biomass match what we see on the water? That is often much more important through that validation process than what the actual model structure would be. We can have a very simple model that can give very, very good answers, and so we don't need a more complex model. You can also have some very, very complex models that tend to alias very important things that are going on in the stock, such as ignoring recruitment patterns, such as ignoring strong year classes that support the fishery. So really the challenge is to make sure that when we review these models, you have the right experts in the room to pull them apart and to tease these pieces out to make sure they're giving a real signal.
Experts.
And you also have the people around to demonstrate it. Thank you.
Okay. Oh, thank you. My next question is to Mr. LeBlanc. Leonard, you referenced in your written brief to the committee about the need for the need for a better collaboration between fisher experience and DFO, and we've heard this extensively in this report about the sometimes inability of fisher knowledge to find its way into the decision-making process or the science-based decision-making process of DFO. My question to you is, and this is a candid one, when the minister announces an increase in stocks, nobody questions the science, including fishers. But the minute you start cutting the quota, then everybody starts to question the science. So how how would you recommend to this committee, in its recommendation to the minister, that one, the information provided by fishers is valid, that can be taken into the consideration process? How would you, could you give us your opinion on that?
Thank you for the question. I've raised that same point at different committees where, when stocks were going up, the science was everybody's best friend, and the science, and when the stocks were going down, all of a sudden, the program that they were using before all of a sudden was invalid and didn't work because the numbers that they were coming up with didn't satisfy the fishermen. And I've expressed that in many committees. I think some of the previous speakers alluded to this. I think there's value in what fishermen, with what they see, what they witness on the ocean, could be included in science evaluations. We have thousands of eyes, thousands of ears of the ocean, on the ocean every day, that see change, and then that could be put into a science. Now, science seems to think that if it's not up to their standard, then it's basically no good. And I think there's a need to reevaluate how science is done, how science is calculated, and I think what the fishermen can bring and their knowledge and what they see, it would be very valuable. So I think the process has to change from where the basis. It seems like, and I'm not pointing the finger at anybody, but it seems like in some sentences, if you don't have a university degree, well, you're not to be heard, and that frustrates me because I don't have a university degree, but I've worked with science for 40 years.
Thank you, Leonard. That's a valid point. Actually, the first time we heard that. But if you could provide anything in a written form to us on how you would like to see the fisher knowledge incorporated into the Department of Scientific Decision, it would be appreciated. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Morrissey. We'll now go to Mr. Perkins for 5 minutes or less, please.
Start my clock here. I was not expecting that. So thank you, Mr. Chair. My first question, I guess, to Mr. Bunnell, you've spoken now, I think, about the issue of whether or not adequate amount of science or budgets are being provided on the DFO, or the F side of the DFO, the fisheries side. I think in 2021, the budget there was $158 million. It has not increased as much as the ocean side of the science has over the last 6 or 7 years. That's grown by about 63%. So if it had grown by 63% on the fishery management side, this year there'd be another $37 million available for fisheries science. Do you have any idea how much $37 million would do in providing the gaps that exist in the integrated fisheries management plans?
Need to get my calculator out for that one, I think. It's a very good question, and it would provide tremendous value if targeted in the right direction. And I want to preface all this by saying, we're certainly not opposed to the investments that have been made in ocean science. I mean, $1.5 billion has gone into the Ocean Protection Plan within the department over the last 5 or 6 years, I think, and there's been that's a significant investment, and some of it at least has gone into direct work, like issues around the marine mammal issues that we covered earlier. But we're not seeing anywhere remotely to a comparable investment, either in expansion of stock assessment capacity in terms of research vessel surveys, and we're certainly not seeing an investment in stock assessment scientists, and not at the level required, with all of the challenges on the horizon in terms of meeting third-party certification standards around Marine Stewardship Council, where we need management strategy evaluations and harvest control rules. And you have batch one stocks. Dr. Pescato, I think, touched on this earlier in terms of rebuilding plans. We have initiatives lined up in the queue right now with the department. I can only speak to us. I'm sure there are others in industry across the country where you have initiatives lined up in the queue that need to be done, but you've got a very small number of stock assessment scientists available to do it, and they're all the same people working on the same files. And you're going to have an issue of a generational gap if you're not careful, as the brightest and smartest scientists and stock assessment modelers that are going to be exiting the system in the coming years, retiring. And you're not going to have that transitional skills in terms of new people coming in. I'm really concerned about this. We've been flagging this for a number of years. So that 30-something million certainly would be quite valuable, targeted and focused specifically in the area of stock assessment science, modeling capacity, meeting fisheries required targets that we need to meet, getting the best science available in a changing climate, all things that are really desperately needed, and we certainly need that infusion of funding. That amount or more would be very, very welcome right now. I can certainly tell you that.
Thank you very much. Mr. Fiscato, I'm going to follow up on Mr. Morrissey's question, a bit of a follow-up on the modeling accuracy, and you said having the right people in the room, which I think was your next question, which you didn't get to ask, part of in terms of questioning that science. And one of the issues I brought up here is the analysis our team has done is that, as an example, the time of year when the mackerel science is being done on the spawning biomass in the Gulf of St. Lawrence, the average water temperature of the last decade's been 8 degrees, as opposed to the temperature in which mackerel spawn at in the Gulf, which is 10 to 13 degrees. Is that the kind of questioning you'd like to see in terms of having access in the room to what's being done? Because a lot of that science that's being done to do the stock assessments is not actually peer reviewed.
Thank you for the question. And yes, that is exactly the focus, where you have a body of knowledge from outside that is in conflict or in contrast to that presented in the room. And unless that knowledge is brought to the table during those discussions and those CSAS processes, it generally is not accepted. And so then it is forced to be offered after the fact when it cannot be incorporated actually into the science or decision-making process. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Back to Mr. Bonnell. In talking about the use of commercial fleets or fleets to help on doing the science as a backup, is that a more cost-effective way? Is that something that DFO should be doing with limited budgets, actually not as a backup, but as an expanded program to have access to more platforms to more economically be able to do the science they need to do in the species that aren't being covered right now?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's not even a debatable topic. There's no doubt that the use of industry platforms, when properly standardized, proper engagement between the industry platform provider, the industry association engaged, and DFO, you go through that proper exercise. Coast Guard, government research vessels cannot certainly match the cost effectiveness, and I would argue probably can't match the coverage and the reliability, and there's data to back that up if the committee were so inclined to take a closer look. So yeah, I think it could easily be expanded, and you're not sacrificing anything in terms of the legitimacy of the research. Again, I want to stress this point: this work is done with oversight and led by DFO. It's us providing platforms for the research, and we're good at managing boats. That's what we do. And so we can provide boats on a time series basis, on a cost-effective basis, with good planning. And it can be as a contingency plan. Obviously, investments have been made in new vessel capacity, so it can be provided as a contingency plan. But in cases where there are new needs, because the vessels that are coming into the sector right now are filling existing responsibilities, but there are still many gaps that exist across the country for that matter. And so I think it could certainly be utilized incrementally, industry platforms, to provide a cost-effective means with some good limited funding from government to make that work. I think it's a model that should be more closely considered in terms of a recommendation by the committee and certainly by the department. We've raised it, and there have been some interest in this. I'm not saying there's no interest, but there have been some challenges, obviously, in getting over the hump and actioning some of this as well.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Perkins. We'll now go to Mr. Hanley for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. And thank you to all the witnesses for appearing. You've all, from various angles, I think, today described how science is a method and not a person or a degree, and not a decision. And fundamentally, it's about careful and documented observation that is reproducible and transparent. And I like the way that Mr. Bonnell described the importance of validation of surveys by fisher industry knowledge. because I think that helps to ground truth the scientific method behind stock assessment. But my first question to Mr. Bonnell is actually not quite about that. Excuse me, gentlemen. It's about Indigenous knowledge, and we know that Indigenous peoples have thousands of years of experience in fishing sustainably, and their insight is central to understanding how we nurture fisheries. And helps to inform decisions regarding commercial fishing and prioritizing sustainability. And I'm just wondering, with regard to ocean choice, do you have a framework in place for Indigenous consultation? And if not, or even if, how can DFO support in ensuring Indigenous knowledge is included in commercial fishing?
Well, thank you for the question. It's certainly one that I'm extremely interested in. I started my career actually working with Indigenous groups in Nunavut with the Nunavut government back in 2000. Was very heavily involved through the land claim agreement process in Nunavut in terms of advancing science programming, advancing Indigenous knowledge and considerations into decision-making process. And I think it's one area where the department has really made some really strong strides. There's very active engagement of Indigenous groups in all of the, certainly all the fisheries that we're involved in, both in terms of the management review process, in terms of direct representation in the science review process. My understanding, at least, we have a number of Indigenous partnerships as an organization. We work closely with our Innu colleagues in Labrador, in the northern shrimp fishery, which we take great pride in and have a great relationship with. And many of our associations today, I'm on the executive of the Fisheries Council of Canada, a very strong representation from the Indigenous communities, particularly in the Eastern Arctic. And their views are certainly heard around that table as well. And I think it's an important topic. The reconciliation agenda is a very active agenda right now that we are all paying very close attention to, and certainly Indigenous knowledge and Indigenous stakeholders deserve certainly a seat at the table and direct representation and input into the decision-making process.
Thank you. Very apropos for today's Indigenous Peoples Day. I want to turn to Mr. Prévost, and this is the first time I think in this series that we're hearing about bait, and I'm very grateful that you're here about fish being used as bait and how important that is to the overall sustainability of the crustacean industry. And I'm hoping to see this reflected in our report. I was also interested when you talk about the crustacean fishery as being very traditional, and how, well, of course, tradition is so important to community investment in fishery, continuation of the livelihood, et cetera. But on the other hand, there may be practices that are slower to adapt to modern reality. And I'm just wondering if you could comment on DFO's role or potential role in fostering culture change in adapting to modern realities of stocks.
Thank you for the question. I don't know if DFO really has done anything in that area. I mean, I fish lobster, I fish crab, I fish herring, I fish mackerel. I fish the way I was taught. And nobody else has shown me benefits of doing it any other way. I mean, the only reason I got into the alternative bait business was I just found it wasteful while I was fishing herring and mackerel, and trying to reduce output protein for input protein makes a lot of sense. It just seemed like such a waste. And we are finding the people that are changing or have interest in alternatives to traditional bait are younger. And it'll probably be a few generations before people are willing to change. I appreciate the question. Thank you.
Thank you. I believe I have 15 seconds left. A short question for Dr. Vescato. You gave a really good overview of the Facebook cable situation to Mr. Perkins' questions, but going back to that, was there a specific shortcoming of DFO that you could outline in about 10 seconds?
Thank you for the question. The big issue on our side was really one related to consultation and notice. There was no notification that this was happening. We were not engaged with the department to help guide the cable. It was basically a proponent talking directly to us to let us know that it was happening. Nothing else was communicated by the department to help us shape this so it did not impact the industry or conservation values. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Hanley. We'll now go to Madame Debienne for 2.5 minutes, please.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Back to Mr. LeBlanc. We have, of course, gone through this experience of your coordination with the DFO, with scientists, with regards to protecting the lobster resources. You talked about a positive experience. Do you think that between the DFO, the people on the ground, the scientists, where you are and with the DFO, and I do mean the scientists at the DFO, do you think that there could be like some sort of committee for to settle all the problems in fisheries? For example, herring and mackerel, if there was a bit of predictability, if 10 years ago we had established the same type of thing that we did with lobster, do you think we would be where we are today? That's an excellent question. You do know, I'm sure that you know that there is an advisory committee on herring and mackerel. Discussions have been taken place, and science has suggested that the species is endangered. We've heard that a lot over the past meetings. As Canadians, though, we stopped fishing mackerel, and they are being fished by the U.S. There's a biomass issue. I think that the committee is in place. It's just about the discussions and their nature. They should be a bit more up to date, if you will. So what you're saying is that the same resource is being used by the Americans. We stopped fishing, but they haven't, and so that will not have a positive impact in the short term to reestablish the resource. With regards to mackerel, I think that it will be a problem with regards to regenerating the resource. Are you suggesting, I'll let you finish on that with the time that is left, just maybe just a sentence. I would like to have discussions with the Americans, because if this is such a big issue, as the department has been saying and science is telling us, that Americans should stop fishing in the same resource. Thank you.
Ms. Barron for 2.5 minutes, please.
Thank you, Chair. I think I'm going to change up my question here last minute. I hope this wasn't already answered, but I'm wondering, Mr. LeBlanc, if you can clarify or expand upon, in your closing or your opening statement, Tess, you had mentioned around DFO's decision to close the herring and mackerel fishery this spring without a science-based rebuilding program bewildered many in the industry. And I'm wondering if you can expand a little bit on the importance of the science-based rebuilding programs when making decisions within fisheries.
Well, everything, from my perspective, everything should be science-based when it comes to a national resource. And that's where it should come from, not the amount of money a fisherman should make or not. It should be science-based, because I always said, if you take care of the fish will take care of you. That was my basis for how I approached going to meetings. So when the decision came down on both the herring and the mackerel, it came down at the 11th hour, very little notice to industry. In fact, probably minutes before the decision came. Then we said, okay, well, where's the rebuilding plan? And they said, well, we'll meet in the fall. And then we'll talk about a rebuilding plan. Well, if you have a crisis in the fishery, you don't wait. I mean, if you get sick tomorrow, you don't wait till 6-7 months to go see your doctor. You go immediately as soon as you're sick. So the same thing should have been for these two resources that they were closing. They should have brought industry together immediately and say, okay, we have a problem. Let's acknowledge it, and there is. And then, okay, we need to have a building plan, and we need to have it now, not in 6 months.
Those are great examples. Thank you. Just continuing on, Mr. LeBlanc, you had spoken about the collaborative work that had happened. You used an example around the harvesters and DFO, and also spoke about the process with the Pictou First Nations, the provincial government, and DFO. Can you share a little bit about how DFO can help promote such collaborative approaches and the benefits of this approach? I know this is expanding on Mr. Hanley's question to you, of course.
Well, I think DFO should use examples as to where it's working and build on that. It seems like the department, with its plan to have a scientific exercise with industry and First Nation, wants to reinvent the wheel. And I think there's processes that have been there, like the lobster node, for example, in the Gulf, that have great success. I mean, we have First Nation as a member of our association. When we did our plan, when we took our fishery from 9,000 pound lobster to 55,000 pound lobsters this year, they voted with us. They were part of the entire process, the entire analysis. And I think that's how you have inclusion. I think DFO sometimes kind of gives themselves more work when the work is already done and the process is already there.
Thank you, Ms. Barron. We'll now go to Mr. Arnold for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you to the witnesses. I'll start off with Mr. Provost, if I could. Mr. Provost, in your opening comments, you mentioned that it's a challenging area to try and assess the size and scope of the bait industry, and that there are likely significant underestimates in the mackerel used for bait. Could you elaborate further on that and describe where the gaps may be in the actual estimating or assessment of the catch?
Yeah, I'm not 100% certain. I mean, the gaps in the accurate data, I got that from DFO. As far as undeclared catch goes, I mean, I know it came at the 11th hour when they were shutting it down, but a lot of people saw it coming. The freezers are full, including ours. There was a pretty big heads up. Because we don't have a real process pertaining just to bait, it sort of opens another market for, undeclared catch. Whatever the fisherman catches, as long as they're using it for bait, it's not recorded. And if we're using 700 million pounds for bait, I mean, that's a pretty big gap, as far as I know.
In the recording of catch that's actually taking place for bait, and it's not recorded as out there, basically.
Exactly. And I'm not sure how a lot of the I'm a pretty simple guy, but a lot of the stuff coming in from other countries and export from the USA, I don't know how it's declared there. If it just comes to Canada as bait, then we wouldn't know what species it was.
Thank you. Maybe for you and for Mr. LeBlanc, to what extent are illegal, unreported, and unregulated fisheries affecting how science is determined or directed and then used within the department? I'll start off with Mr. LeBlanc first, if you could answer that one.
Well, I'm sure it's a problem. I mean, when you have unregulated fisheries, and it's happening in a few of the fisheries that I know of. But since we're talking about bait, I mean, there's no problem with unregulated herring and bait fishery now because there's none. They're being closed. So that's not an issue. Mind you, there's still unregulated and illegal activities happening in some fisheries that I'm sure DFO science have to apply a percentage when they do their calculation. I mean, they've given me estimations in the past, and I think that's how they would approach their scientific approach.
They open with what they consider to be the allowances or the allocation for IUU fisheries?
Correct. I think they have a percentage that they'll apply to their formula.
Both of you got anything to add? Mr. Pivos, did you have anything to add?
No, thank you. I think a chain of custody when it comes to bait would probably eliminate a lot of the undeclared catch and help DFO, gather more accurate data. If
I'm going to pass the
was
rest of my time on to Mr. Perkins. Thank you.
Okay, my question, Mr. Chair, is for Mr. LeBlanc. Are we facing, without a robust seal harvest management plan, with the decision on closing the mackerel and herring fishery, are we facing yet another 30-year plus sort of moratorium that may happen on that fishery as well, in the absence of any kind of management plan for mackerel and any kind of management plan for seals?
Well, I was there when the minister made the decision to shut the groundfish fishery. Actually, I was underwater fishing. And back then they said they'd close it for 5, maybe 10 years max, and it would rebound and come back. Well, it didn't. It didn't because they didn't control the seal population. And now the seal population is so high, very likely that the Southern Gulf cod will not come back because it's been allowed to eat and fish for so many years. In fact, for quite a few years, it's been fishing a bigger biomass than we've ever fished in any given year. So that's a problem. Now, with the cod not being there, well, the target's going to be mackerel and it's going to be herring. So yes, I agree with you. If we don't do something immediately with the seals, the rebuilding plan for the herring and the mackerel is going to be very limited.
Thank you, Mr. Perkins. We'll now go to Mr. Kellaway for 5 minutes or less, please.
Cormier's going to take my spot.
Oh.
Thank you, Mr. Callaway. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Prevost, look, my dad was a fisherman all his life also, and I go out fishing with him a lot of time. He's retired now, but I still enjoy it every time I have a chance to go with my cousin that owns a boat now. So in your, I just want to go back with what Mr. Arnold was saying, like 694 million pounds, you said the estimation of bait needed for Atlantic Canada, including Quebec. Do you know what the percentage or just an estimation of that amount is coming only from herring and mackerel, like from our waters, if you know what I mean? Like,
if I would be guessing, I would say half or more.
So you mean like 300 million pounds of these bait are coming from our area, our waters, right?
Yeah. So I mean, even if you looked at the past, if you look at that usage and what's coming in from other countries and what the quota was, we're using more for bait than what was on the quota. So it's not. The recordings are not accurate.
So when you said the recorded are not accurate, can you just elaborate on that, please?
Well, if DFO says this is what the quota is for mackerel and herring, and they can assume that we're using 700 million pounds for bait, and the quotas are less than that, then there's definitely some gaps in the recordings of the data.
So the recording when the fishermen are arriving at the wharf and what is recorded, right?
Yeah, and
Yeah. Okay. So you have your company is called Bait Master, right? So you were telling something also about the bait that we import. This is kind of something that is a little bit troubling for me to hear. So you said that there's no risk assessment management or whatsoever for validation of imported bait, let's say from Japan or Norway. Doesn't CFIA taking care of that, making sure that if we import bait from let's say a herring or mackerel from Japan, that they're good to fit in our water with no disease?
No, there's no regulations for bait. I mean, we're an alternative bait manufacturer, but we do deal in straight bait. We're buying lobster tonight and selling bait, but we have to do our risk assessments in the U.S. So I know if it passes the Department of Marine Resources qualifications, I'm safe to sell it in Canada. But we're the only company that's doing it. We're a little bit ahead of the regulations in the alternative bait game, so we're following their direction.
Were you aware of some fishermen, and we heard that on this committee a couple of times regarding the Asian carp, that there was a possibility to use that for bait? Are you aware of that?
Yeah, and I know it wouldn't pass a risk assessment, or most of the species of Asian carp wouldn't. So if I were to grind it up and put it in an alternative bait and try to pass it through a risk assessment and meet the Department of Maine qualifications and sell it in the U.S.
Mm-hmm.
I export a lot of bait now.
Mm-hmm.
It wouldn't meet it, and I don't want to be we don't want to be the company that introduces Asian carp to these waters.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Mm-hmm.
so unless somebody says it's safe and okay, and of course a study would have to be done to see if it actually works to catch lobster.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm. So is your company trying to develop some other kind of bait, like for example, like I know that the MFU, for example, and other organization are trying to develop some synthetic bait, if I can say. Are you trying to develop that also, or?
Yeah, we put, I would say 20% of our revenue now is dedicated to research and development, but it's very costly, and you know, studies need to be done and proof of concept, and you know, it's we have a lot of fishermen as investors or involved in some of the testing. I think we're at 480 different trials. And there's other baits. There's acoustic bait technology. There's light technology. We're into it all, and it's going to take some time. And you know, we're definitely not in an overfunded industry. You know, the alternative bait business is not attractive to any funders, government or non-government. It's a little different, you know.
Well, I think we should, and I'm glad that you said at the beginning that, you know, like fisherman doesn't want to try something else sometime, like because, like, you know, they have more confidence. Maybe like my father, if you will have give him like something other than herring and mackerel, he will not have put that in his trap, right? So, but do you think we will get there, finding a solution for synthetic bait that will work?
Sorry, Mr. Cormier, your time has gone over, so we'll finish up now with Mr. Small for 5 minutes or less, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I've got one more quick question for Mr. Bonnell. In terms of stakeholder input in fishery science, do you have any examples of suggestions that industries have put forward to DFO, but they've been shrugged off?
Yeah, no, I could certainly cite an example or two. I mean, there are many times that we align very well with DFO, but there are times when those things happen. 3PS cod would be a classic example, I suppose, where for a number of years, you know, we were following a biomass of our year class of cod coming through. It was the basis upon which we established Marine Stewardship Council certification, you know, probably about well over a decade ago now. And DFO developed a new assessment model. I think it was late 2019 into 2020 in the advisory process, a new assessment model which completely recast the history of that stock. Basically, we went from a stock that was at 150% of B-lim to 0.24, I think that year, if I remember correctly. And basically, all the advice that we have received for years leading up to that turned out, you know, certainly with the new assessment model, was all false. That year class didn't exist, which we or generally didn't exist, which we knew it did exist. We pushed back hard on the new assessment model. We flagged a lot of issues, which I wouldn't have time to get into here today. To the credit of the prior minister, she did do an independent review of the new assessment model. We thought it was far too narrowly, the parameters were far too narrowly defined, and no changes still today have been made. And so it's an example of an area where we felt that industry views, our perceptions, our on the water experience, what we're seeing in terms of catches, and the reputation, obviously, of ours. We had a fishery that was MSC certified, and the retrospective on that model basically would have indicated that stock was in the critical zone, according to the new assessment model at the time, which is a reputational hit for everybody, really, associated with that. So that's an area of that I would cite as one example. We remain concerned about it, and we'll continue to flag this at the advisory table and look for improvements and changes as time goes on.
Thank you, Mr. Bonnell. Staying on the topic of stock assessments, my question is for Mr. Viscato, Mr. Chair. Mr. Viscato, do you see a trend developing in stock assessments in terms of input of ENGOs, such as Oceans North, for example? The change in who's having input on stock assessments, is there a trend versus the input of industry stakeholders?
Thank you for the question. It is quite clear over the recent history of the last, I would say, 5 years or so. We've seen an increasing shift away from those industry stakeholders who are directly linked to the resource being replaced by ENGOs they might come from well-educated backgrounds, but they don't necessarily have that tangible link to the boat, to the wharf, to the fishery itself. So the level of input provided is coming in at a different type of level, but there's definitely been a move away from the inclusion of the harvesting sector directly into these tables and a move towards the inclusion of ENGO representatives. Thank you.
And again, Mr. Viscato, are you concerned with the changes in assessment models that are putting fish stocks further into the critical zone than they previously were?
Again, thank you for the question. I have to harken back to Mr. LeBlanc's input here, which is we can't only be happy when science says something is going up. Really, this is about getting the right answer and getting a consistent answer. So whether it's a stock is appearing better or a stock is appearing worse, that is not the concern as much as it is about making sure that we have predictability moving into the future, but what that stock is going to do during this period of profound change. There are some trends in some areas where we're seeing fairly negative perspectives being provided on stock status, and that is partly linked to how these assessment models are being produced, the knowledge base that's being used to inform them, and whether we actually get a chance to pull them apart to make sure they're giving us a real signal as opposed to some noise.
Thank you. My last quick question here is going to be to Mr. Prevost, and it's on Asian carp. And I heard you reference Maine. I think last year Maine used 7 million pounds of Asian carp and a dead frozen product. Do you have concerns about introducing Asian carp into the Atlantic Ocean, just given the fact that it's dead?
I do. I think some studies would have to be done, risk assessments and whatnot. And we don't want to be the company that introduces something that has a negative impact on the environment right now. And from what I understand, talking to fishers in Maine, it's really not a very good bait. Not everything works to catch lobsters, and believe me, fishermen would welcome carp, Asian carp, if it actually caught lobsters or crab. However, it appears that it doesn't. Might be a good filler. But that's it.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Small, and that kind of comes to an end to our meeting today. I want to say a big thank you to our witnesses who took the time out to share their knowledge with the committee today. It's greatly appreciated. Big thank you to everybody involved in making today's meeting a success, interpreters, clerks, analysts, and everybody behind the scenes. Want to let everybody know there will be no meeting on Thursday as we didn't line anything up. If you recall, we mentioned this last meeting and the meeting before and probably the meeting before that we wouldn't book anything for Thursday as it is the last day the House is supposed to sit, and of course we could be swamped with votes or we might have no votes. We don't know. So it's too late to line up witnesses, and of course everything else being what it is, there will be no meeting on Thursday. So I hope everybody has an opportunity to have a restful, enjoyable, productive summer, and hope to see everyone back in good form in September. Oh, if you can make that work, buddy, you're welcome to. Actually, you can have lunch on it today. I'm back.
You as well, Mr. Chair. Have a good summer.
Yes. All right. Madame Debienne.
I simply want to thank you, Mr. Chair, for this very uplifting and orderly session, and hoping you all have a fantastic summer to everybody here. And that's all. Rest well. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Adjourned.